Hey guys, we're going to do some reptile hacks. These are reptile husbandry hacks, but when we keep a lot of these animals, in this case we're going to talk about snakes, we encounter problems. The more animals you have, the more potential problems you have, but there are often very easy solutions to rectify things, to remedy things, and I'm going to show you a couple of them. Boega dendrophila can be very persistent, problematic feeders because they want to eat lizards and frogs. In this case, I'm going to show you a melanota, and this animal, like sometimes will not eat for a while. So the first thing we can do is we can cup them, and cupping them is as simple as this. So we can take this little mangrove snake, and since they like to come out and kind of climb on things, you can put them like this, and then what we would do is you put a live pinky in this cup with this, and then you keep that at a warm ambient temperature. So in this case, most colubrids, 84 degrees is great. And you're going to put your lid on overnight, and you're going to have air holes and keep it dark. And what you're doing is you're preventing the animal from all that open space. You want these animals to feel secretive. So it's almost like they've just raided a mouse nest and they're finding the pinkies. And sometimes what that does is it brings the idea of eating in the forefront of what that animal is doing overnight, and it's very quiet. So that's a really good idea. Another trick, you can take a defrosted mouse pinky and you can brain it. So you split the nose right up to the brain, expose a little bit of the brain, and then leave that on a piece of paper towel. I include the paper towel in there as opposed to moss and stuff like that because it's very clean. It's rather sterile-ish. And you can put it in there. The animal can hide under there, and then it can come out and find its food. This guy's got a pinky in him. Okay, this is the trick. I got, in this case, a little rat tail. I've defrosted that. Now I got this little baby. I can sit here and try to open its mouth with forceps. No, that's not so great. So what I can do, I'm going to take this, and I see my thumb right here. So what I do is I use my thumb. Oh, you bit me. Okay, so right here, I'm going to use just that little bit of pressure. Okay, so what I'm going to do, now that rodent tail is wet. So what I'm doing, I'm going to sit here and turn this rodent tail clockwise, keeping the animal straight with my fingers. So he's got food hanging out of his mouth. How is he going to react? Well, he's going to sit here and act like he wants to spit it up. So, trick. What I do, I'm going to do it again. So I didn't really have it down far, so we're going to do this one more time. So the first offensive thing is just to bite it and chew on it. But that is not what we want. I want to get you crawling, 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 crawling. Wow. Tongue flick, that's it right there. Okay, as soon as you get that tongue flick, brain's going, now we're like, okay, we're not going to spit it up. It did really take a while. I'm wondering if it's like the camera, how it's just, and it just causes them to pause. So look at this little tongue sticking out. There we go. Great. Bam! That's what I've been waiting for. Just like that. Okay, that's good. We got that. Yes. So we're going to talk about Flagel, which is metronidazole. This is a valuable medication and a tool for all reptile keepers. Whenever you start having numbers of animals, there's often little ailments that trouble us, and maybe the animal's not acting right, and there are ways to deal with it. Generally, bring your animal to a vet, and they will do a fecal or a cloacal wash. Cloacal wash is taking sterile saline, putting it up into the snake's butt, so it starts it pulls out some of the lower gastrointestinal flora, and you want to see if you have a really high rate of protozoa, amoebas, flagellates. Okay, these are little parasites, but this is part of actually often a very healthy animal. They live with these in the gastrointestinal system. Even captive-born animals actually have flagellates, protozoa. It is normal, but when something goes wrong, a lot of stress or something like that, the animal, its balance gets gets out of whack, its immune response isn't working, so sometimes we need to step in there and try to do something. Okay, when do we use Flagel? If I have an animal that's been losing weight, maybe regurgitating, when I look at its stool, it's really smelly. It's diarrhea. Flagel, metronidazole, is often used when your dog isn't doing well, and all of a sudden your dog's like, got diarrhea, maybe retching, not doing well. A lot of times they give it Flagel. The dog got into something, it screwed up its gastrointestinal system. For people, they use it to treat gonorrhea. So that's one of the things they do. But the hack is this: fish. Go look on Amazon. Donnie will show you the thing. Metronidazole, Flagel. How do I dose that? Okay, so I've just showed you. We have colubrids, king snakes, milk snakes, mandarin rat snakes, tropical rat snakes, Trans-Pecos rat snakes. Gets a dose of 75 milligrams, so very, very small amount per kilogram. Well, how do you do that? And let's look at ball pythons and boas. That's at a higher rate, 125 milligrams. So what's specific about the dose? The animal has a metabolism. Generally, colubrids have a faster metabolism, so they're faster metabolic rate than a python or a boa. So we want to use less of it because there is a sensitivity to it. So how are we going to do this? So the first thing you do, you take the weight of the animal. So let's say pounds. So we're going to take the pounds, and then we're going to divide that by 2.2. And that is going to equal kilograms. I'll hold this for you in a second, Donnie.
I'll flip it. It's fine.
Yeah. Kilograms. So in a larger animal, that works fine. Okay, but now we have something really, really small. So let's say we have like that little mangrove snake. Okay, so now we're talking about something that weighs grams. How do you do that? Well, if we put it on a gram scale, which is, I have a microgram scale right here, but you put it on a postal scale, and this is for micro. This is actually to measure medication. Okay? No, I'm not a drug dealer. I'd be a lot wealthier, I'm sure, if I was. So
You wouldn't be a very good drug dealer anyways.
But anyways, okay. So we use like a postal scale for smaller stuff, and then obviously we use a larger thing, like for, even human weighing. Let's say I have a 6-pound boa or something like that. So let's say we have a little ball python, and maybe it weighs 60 grams. So grams. Well, how many grams are in a kilogram if we go back to this dose? Okay, so now if I'm measuring in grams, I will do that. So grams, so kilogram equals 1,000 grams. Okay, so if I have a ball python and it weighs 65 grams, right? Not 650 grams. So if I took 65 and I divide that by 1,000, I'm thinking that's going to equal 0.065 kilograms. Okay, so I've now taken a ball python that weighs 65 grams, which is 0.065 grams. And we know the ball python dose goes to pythons and boas. That's 125 milligram per kilogram. So I am now going to take 0.065, right? And I'm going to multiply times 125 for that 65 gram ball python. We'll round it up to 10 milligrams. 10 milligrams of Flagel. So if you get your metronidazole, your Flagel from Amazon, We can look for something called fish Zol, but fish medication, it treats all sorts of bloat. It's besides being an antimicrobial for fish, it's also anti-protozoa, anti-amoeba. But fish suffer from amoeba. We get Malawi bloat of African cichlids, But it also treats some bacteria. Often it's really effective at treating bacteria that live in the lower part of the gastrointestinal system where there's not a lot of oxygen. And that's anaerobic part of the system of the animal. A little bit of oxygen. They live in these deprived environments, and metronidazole is very, very effective in the lower gastrointestinal flora of a sick snake, like a ball python. So now, what do? Well, we take out our little gram scale. Is that zero? There we go. So this is, in theory, this is a 750 milligram tablet. Yep. We just shave that down. We measure off 10 milligrams. We would then take a little 1 cc syringe. And what I would recommend doing in a small dose, I would take that, I'd put your powder, and I'd put it in here, like this. I'd take my plunger, put it in there, turn it over, put this all the way up, and then what I would do, I'd draw up a little bit of water. A little bit of water. It's very soluble in water, but it breaks into very small pieces. So I then add a little bit of water, and I flick it. We have to imagine there's Flagel in here. I flick it, and then I do the same thing when I'm showing, the baby snake. I guess I can show you how to do that. So in this case, we're going to show you how to assist a Brazilian rainbow boa. And I always try to hold that part straight, okay? So what I want to do, I usually go across like the bit of a horse, and I'm pulling with my thumb, right, towards the back of the mouth. We do not want to get water down the glottis. I go like this, make sure the body's straight like that, and then I go like this. So there we go. Everything's okay. Tongue flicking, drinking. So the water, snakes are never going to have like enough water in them. So if I had medication in there, we'd be really good. So let's say this Brazilian rainbow boa was giving me a problem. It was throwing up. Its poop was extra stinky. And I know that my husbandry is nailed. None of this is applicable if you're not nailing your husbandry. This is an animal, much like an anaconda, comes from very humid environments, but it needs to be always present with a water source where it can drink. But if you kept this animal dank and wet, it would fail to thrive. So you need to have a very well ventilated cage. An animal like this, an ambient temperature of 82, 84 is excellent. A hot spot, a definitive hot spot, 92 to 94 is really good. Paper or some good bedding, always keep the water clean. All right, now here's another thing. So obviously going to a vet is the way to do it. Go there, they'll do a fecal, they're going to put it under a microscope. They're very good at distinguishing the different parasites and the different problems that may be causing your animal grief. But sometimes we have to do what we need to do, and we suspect something, especially if we, I'll give you a good example. I have large reticulated pythons, and sometimes they get chickens from different sources, and I'll fed the chicken to my animal, and then I come in there and, oh goodness, there's a horrible mess, and there's big, long roundworms. So it's very, very distinguishable. My animal's got a parasite, and it's pooping it all out because the chickens had all these big, giant nematodes. How do I treat it? Once again, we have to, first of all, identify the problem, and then we identify the remedy. This is one of the remedies. And the dose is 100 milligram per kilogram. I've just showed you in the Flagel dosing. So the first thing I do, weigh the animal. So if I'm weighing it in pounds, I weigh it in pounds, and then I divide it by 2.2. That value is now the kilograms. And I take that kilogram value and multiply it by 100, and that tells me the percentage of wormer I use. So this is Panicure. This is in a liquid suspension. So you want to make sure the first thing you do, it will sit on the bottom. So we're going to, now it's in a suspension, and we're going to use that with a syringe, and we're going to draw up however much it says. So if it says, let's say it's a small animal, and let's say it says 60 milligrams. There are 100 milligrams in this dose. It will, in suspension, it's a 10%. So it's 100 milligrams per ml, which is per cc. Okay? So if the animal, and my equation came out, let's say 60 milligrams, 6/10 of a cc of this suspension, I would draw out. So 6/10 of this. Almost there. Okay. Same deal. We're going to take this. We're going to make sure we get this down the animal's throat a little bit. It doesn't taste bad, so whatever. Kind of chalky. But
I feel like you worm yourself all the time, fellas. Yeah, just in case.
Whatever. I'm gross. I'm
super gross.
Riddled with parasites. So anyways, so make sure you kind of get it down a ways. And I always like to, if you can kind of tilt the animal's head upward and stuff like that, that helps initiate the drinking reaction. I'm like doing these weird things with my hands, but it does. So we get it down there and you kind of push it down and then let go of the head and you kind of work the animal up. Okay, Panicure is really good for things like pinworms, roundworms, ascarids, nematodes, that. But it doesn't treat all parasites. And there is something else that actually you can also use if you have flukes, liver flukes, trematodes, and cestodes, tapeworms, okay? But one thing I want to tell you, what this actually does, it doesn't just go in there and melt the parasite. So in a heavy loaded animal, we want to be very, very thoughtful, and we want to make sure if the animal's like close to death, sometimes worming it can kill the animal, because as you put the worm into the animal and the parasites start dying, some of them are freaking out, and as they start dying, their dead bodies now pollute the bloodstream, like toxoplasmosis. So but what this is actually doing is it's preventing the parasite from drawing nutrients out of the animal's system, and it causes the parasite to essentially starve. And so we want to do it over a prolonged period of time. And often the eggs of the parasite are immune to the medication I'm giving. So that's why we continue to do this worming. So I was suggesting a good safe rule of thumb is once, a week later, and a week later. And you could keep going for a while. And what you're doing is you're interrupting the life cycle of that parasite. It's never 100%, it's in some cases it will not resolve some really horrible infestations if you just only treat it a couple times. Sometimes you treat for 3 or 4 times. You might wait a little while and then treat it again until you feel like the animal's right. This is relatively very safe. You can buy this at a grain and feed place. People use it for goats and cattle and sheep and everything like that. But it's also very, very good for dogs and cats and your reptiles, lizards, all that. I don't ever think I see an animal ever having a bad reaction. I will note about Flagel, animals with a super, super fast metabolic rate, you want to err on the side of caution, and you just want to make sure you're nailing your dose, and you don't want to overdose it. These are fairly tolerant to kind of overdose a bit and you don't have any ill effect. I'm going to show you another worm right now. This is Valbendazole or albendazole. This is, once again, you can get this from Jeffers online. You can get vetvalleysupply.com. And this is amazingly good stuff. So this is, once again, in a liquid suspension. And this is a little bit scarier than Panicure. So I'm going to half dose the Panicure dose. So I like to do 50 milligram per kilogram. And one of these is, okay, so I would take about, let me see, I'm going to do half. So this is 11%. So it's roughly, it's roughly that 100 milligram in a cc. This is all like 250, pound animals and stuff like that. So we're going to do, so if I would use 1 cc of Panicure, I'm going to use a half a cc of this. Now, what's really great about this? This kills tapeworms, kills flukes, kills trematodes. And we know what tapeworms are. An animal ingest, some parasite egg. It hatches out inside the gastrointestinal system of that animal, and it is now living in the animal, and it's immune to the digestive juices of that animal and the acids, because there's a waxy sheath. And when we administer something like that, I think what it does, it helps dissolve that waxy sheath, and then the tapeworm will let go, and then the animal can poop it out. But once again, you have to do 1 treatment, then a week later, and you may still need to return to that and just keep on dosing your animal orally. Okay, so this is a really good hack. We want to disinfect our equipment, our water dishes. We want to keep things sanitary. So we want to kill bacteria on contact. See this giant aspirin? You know what this is? This is a Chlorine Puck. You use this for swimming pools. This is concentrated chlorine. So what we do? Put it in there. Now what do? Well, if I got a sink full of water and I want to make up a new solution. The problem is, if I use bleach and I dump bleach into that water, that bleach, if I put in let's say I put a cup of bleach in there and I get myself, that's antimicrobial. So it kills a lot of the bacteria present on any of my utensils, anything I'm putting in there. But also, as I'm going through it and I'm disturbing the surface, the chlorine is degassing. It's a chlorine gas. So if I take something like this and I have one of these little pucks, I can take this puck, put it into some water, just a little bit of water, and what happens is it will dissolve some of that chlorine so it becomes soluble. It's in a water solution, and now it's sitting there. So maybe I went with like a third, right? That means that some of that is now in the water. It won't just dissolve the entire puck. Once it becomes super saturated, the erosion is minimal. So now I've got this thing, and I take this and I drop it into a sink full of water. Within, let that sit for 10 minutes or so. There's a really good chance at that point now I have enough disinfectant in that water that I can put my water dishes through there. I can soak everything in there. So I want to be very, very clear about something. People do not understand. They'll often use soap. So we use, Dawn dishwashing detergent. Remember, Dawn dishwashing detergent used with an antimicrobial is a really good way to actually clean your dishes. So the dishwashing detergent is actually removing the organics, okay? So, poop and whatever. So you want to, use that. It helps strip the proteins and all those different stuff, like bacteria. If you ever take like a water dish and you put your finger in there after, your snake's been using it for a couple of days and it's all slimy, that's all this bacteria in there. And we want to strip that away. So if we use a detergent, it's really good. And then we put it into a disinfectant, that really kills that bacteria and burns it away. So one thing you need to understand, if I'm taking a lot of organics and I get my sink full of stuff and I'm putting stuff through there and the water starts getting dirty, all those organics in there are going to counter the microbial reaction and ability of that bleach. So you'd have to actually add more bleach. But what's really nice about this, if I see this present in that sink and it's been sitting there for a while, I know it's working. I don't have to, did the bleach dissolve? Did it, degas? But if I see that puck in there, I know there's a really good chance I have almost like a caustic solution. What you don't want to do, if I leave this in that sink for like a day, it's going to become incredibly powerful. I don't want to mess with that. So once you're done, take this out. Take it out of your sink. You're done. You've already done that, and then put that to drain. But that's a really, really good hack as opposed to using liquid bleach. I use these. I use double sinks. So I go upstairs. We're always disinfecting dishes and stuff like that. And I will just look in the sink. If I see that thing in there, I know we're doing what we need to do. And this is going to stop cross-contamination. So you might have an animal that is shedding some bacteria. It's making it ill, not feeling well, or it's just shedding it. And you might have other snakes that are sensitive to that bacteria. So if I take that dish, I put it in there into that sink, and I don't have any disinfectant, and I just have soap, I can now transfer that bacterium to all of my other animals, and I can spread a disease or a problem. So the chlorine puck and some detergent collectively work really, really well for a husbandry tool, and it's a good way to manage collections because it's not about what you see, it's about what you don't see that can kill your animal. But I'm going to always go back to one thing. A vet knows this stuff cold. They can treat this stuff. One of the problems is a lot of times you go to vets, they're maybe not really aware of the husbandry of these animals, so you guys need to do your due diligence to make sure you're nailing the setup. You know, bringing a sick animal to a vet and not correcting your husbandry is doesn't always work so well. But even if you have a vet who doesn't know a lot, we can talk to them, hopefully. We can educate them, even show them my video. And so if they're even a dog and cat vet, they can still administer the necessary medications to your animal to actually help fix the problem. It's always good to have a really great relationship with your vet. I do.
I gotta turn my camera on, dude.
You didn't turn your camera on.